May the force be with you is a phrase used to wish a person well to overcome a challenge. The invitation in this podcast, May the life force be with you, is to explore what it means to truly feel alive, to appreciate the physical, emotional and spiritual connection to our energy, and finally to understand how this impacts who you are and all that you do. May this conversation inspire you to thrive.
Hello and welcome to May the Life Force be with you. And our intention with this episode is that it makes you buzz with all that is fun and all that is beautiful and all that is profound about life. May it leave you with sweeter nectars in your heart.
Thank you, Karila, and it will become evident in just a second why you brought up those specific words, because our guest today is Sandira Belia. I've probably said that wrong already. And Sandira is a painter, writer, and group facilitator, bridging the physical and non-physical worlds. She was born in Brittany in northwest France, and often seen as a bizarre and otherworldly child by others. But she soon figured out that she wouldn't fit into boxes that were conventionally society kind of constructed. And thanks to her activist and open-minded parents, she was encouraged to travel the world to find her truth. After a few years of training and working in environmental education, she spent a large part of her young adult life backpacking all over the world with an unshakable trust in her guiding star in a quest to understand the authentic nature of life. She studied with various teachers, human and non-human, so I'm very interested in that. And some of the most inspiring ones have been ayahuasca, psilocybin, as well as the spirit of an extremely wise little creature, the honeybee. 14 years ago, she arrived in Portugal, where she explored various alternative ways of living. For many years, the honeybee has been one of her closest allies, her muse and healer. And in 2017, she founded the Bee Wise Network, a synergetic web of bee lovers, and wrote her first book in which she shares many of her delightful conversations with the diva of the honeybees. Hence the nectar and the intention setting from Karila. Welcome. What a beautiful introduction. There's so many different threads that we can go off to immediately.
I just want to say that I don't think we have ever read a full introduction that someone has given us. I think only yours got fully presented because it is that exciting.
It's a story in itself. I felt like I was telling a beautiful story, and it wound up concluding with you writing a book about the bees. So tell us how you first fell in love with the bee.
Wow. Oh, thank you first for inviting me. I'm really thrilled to be part. Wow, the bees have been a journey. My mother was a beekeeper, so I was born in that field, really. And she was a beekeeper for honey harvest. And I never was interested by honey harvest, like the being of the bee. What was what called me. Much later in life, when I arrived to Portugal, I lived in a community, a peace research village called Tamera, south of Portugal. And the person who was caring for the bees was a bit in despair because the beehives were dying and she was trying to collect the honey, couldn't find a way to relate. So I jumped in, but I said, I won't be a honey producer. My calling is to bridge the bees and humans. So I created right away a bee garden, like a place to hold space. And from there, I started to communicate with them, to receive information, to they became my teacher, actually.
So let's go back to that. You're bridging the communication between humans and bees. How does that insight come to you in the first place? How did that come about, or how did you feel that sense that was your calling? I'm so fascinated.
Well, the honeybee has been an emblem, actually, in many, many cultures, and is considered as a goddess or a divine being. In many traditions, she brings the soul, or she takes them home after they leave their physical body. So I guess, it was a real resonance, like something sparkling in my cellular system that got me in. I realized how much they would inspire people to open their heart, and they are an incredible mirror of presence. Like if you're next to a beehive and you're not present, they will let you know. Sometimes in a painful way, but they do react to your internal state.
Can you expand on that?
Sure. So what I came to understand is that each colony of bees has its own personality, and like a cat or a dog, but in a very different way, you can get friends, you can become friends. Some colonies really prefer to be away from humans, but some are actually attracted to create relationship with humans. And so when I was living for quite a few years in a geodesic dome, which is like made of hexagons and pentagons, and I had 3 colonies directly around my dome, and each one having very, very specific personality. And I was going through a very, very challenging health condition called fibromyalgia. And the bees became really my guide, my ally, and my healers. And the more time I would spend with these colonies, the more they would know me, they would recognize my presence, they would just land on my skin and make a little kiss. And if I would bring a new friend, they would like buzz around and check the level of presence and heart opening of the person. And sometimes they would chase the person, just poking, on your forehead, saying, "Oh, this was too fast." Because, the energetic body of a beehive is really wide. If you want to enter with respect and knock on the door, as you would do for any friend you visit, you stop like few meters away and you connect from heart to heart, and you share your intention, and then you feel that they're like welcoming you in, sucking you in their field, and there something totally different can happen.
You've led me right into that field as well. I was on that journey with you, and it felt, as you were describing it, about being really present. That's how I felt when you were, you're somehow, and this is, how I imagined it when you were talking, that watching the bees and connecting and being with them and observing their behavior was about you being attuned to the real minute detail that was going on around you. The fact that you could see them stop and pause on your skin, and you're observing these tiny little creatures in their minute little world. It feels like a very focused and present experience.
Absolutely. And there is something very, very curious about the bees. One is, for example, it's the only insect that is maintaining warmth in their nest, which is a temperature nearly similar than human blood. And for this, they need constantly to regulate, like if it's too hot in summer, too cold in winter, they will create heat or ventilate out heat to care for their brood. And for me, it feels like this already creates a connection. And they live in community. It is a super organism. So each bee is not an independent being. It's really a cell of this organism, which is highly elastic. Like, if you think about it, the bees, they can go forage kilometers away from the hive. So if you consider it as one living being, it's bigger than an elephant. It's bigger than a whale. It's actually, it's probably, the size of mycelium, certain myceliums, or this type of extremely wide network type of being.
And so when you communicate to the bee diva, did you feel like you were communicating to one being, of like one hive being, or did you feel like you were communicating to a kind of higher consciousness of the bee diva of all of the bees?
Yes,
which one?
The latter.
The latter.
It's really mostly the global collective intelligence of the bee diva that I relate to. Sometimes I enter to it. My way to it is through one colony, which I call the hive being, which will be bridging, but it comes the being I channel in my book, and I share all my conversations, and which gave me loads of new information around their relationship with the world, is a collective intelligence.
And why do you feel like this collective intelligence wanted to communicate with us via you? And I don't mean via you, like what do you think the most important message this diva has for humanity is?
I feel them as one of the main guides of humanity, really, in terms of the relationship that has been created. So they are a bridge between the wild and the domesticated. Like, there is this abundance and service. So the beehive that is really healthy will create more honey than she needs. The problem with conventional beekeeping is that often they are kept in survival mode, and too much honey is taken in exchange for sugar, which is not at all correct food for them. But I have reached sometimes places where a beehive is really wanting to give. So it's such a model in terms of gifting and energy flow.
If they're healthy, they actually want to give it.
I would not say the word want, because it feels too human, but yes, like it is a possibility of sharing, or wax or propolis or venom. Like I had big journey with bee venom, where I was sharing shall I, if you want, I can share a little bit, because this is something that's not so known, but now to also link with life force, like bee venom is a huge concentration of life force energy. And when the bee stings, most of the time she loses her sting. So, and she transfers all her life force into what she stings, which is different than wasp and other stinging bee insects. And when I was ill I had this fibromyalgia journey for 6 years of my life. I was very, very fragile. I lost weight to the point of being 33 kilos, which is like just above 5 stones. It's like I was at the edge, really visiting the edge of life and death. And the bee came like into to offer her support with bee venom. And at first it was not easy for me to think, oh, but the bees are going to die, like I love them so much. How can I be complicit with this? And the more I went into it, first I learned from an RP therapist who is professional, but was doing it without really contact with the bee being. And then I realized that that if I was really coming to the hive with my intention, my prayer, and humility, I could feel that the hive being would happily offer some of her bees for my healing. So for 3-4 months, I was choosing one of my hives because each one of them had a different personality. So I would wake up in the morning and think, connect, who is the hive who wants to support me today? And sometimes it would be Tiamat, sometimes it would be Inanna, depending on what type of energy was needed in my process.
Just tell us about the energy. Just tell us about the energy of the hives. Tell us about the personalities.
Well, Inanna was really like the big mother goddess, like very calm, warm, expansive type of goddess hive. And then I had Tiamat. Tiamat was like, Tiamat is a dragon. She was like very much more young, very you couldn't enter her field without pure presence, otherwise she would sting you right away, or she would chase you. And I had the third one called Gaia, who was very connected to the soul of Gaia itself. And so I would go with, I created a little jar, and I would make my prayer, collect a few bees, a dozen of bees, and make like a stinging session to myself in different specific points on my body. I studied a bit of acupuncture, and mostly it was intuitive. I knew where to sting. And then I would apply 2-3 times per week. I would receive these sessions. And sometimes I would like cry for an hour afterwards. Sometimes I would just be super energetic. And sometimes I would just have to sleep for 3 hours afterwards. So each time very, very different. My lower body was really nearly paralyzed. So I could hardly walk in winter because, there was something blocking the energy flow. So I was mostly applying the venom in my lower part to bring back life force. And really, what the bees told me is that's really about reigniting my own life force flow in my own body. That's why specific points that are these places of reawakening the flow that was cut.
Can I ask how you did a stinging session? Just because I can imagine people are listening going, so what, you released the bee from the jar and like put it on your elbow? Like, how did you, because what I can imagine people doing is like not understanding how you, these beings that are their own beings and their own, like, did you communicate to them about where to sting you? Were they already dead and you were just using the sting? Like, how did you do this?
So I would catch each one of them with special tweezers that I made that doesn't fully smash her, but just hold her. And then I would bring her to the point to sting. And the more I actually studied, and the more I also discovered how to make it possible that they keep the sting. But it's a bit more complex technique, but it's possible. And now that's how we do it in our ceremonies. We are like in our group, the Bee Wisdom team, we are having bee venom ceremonies, and we are more doing smaller stings where there's lesser amount of venom and where the bee can keep her stinger and regenerate the venom.
And what do you know or believe, because they may be two different things, that the venom contains that helped with your healing process?
So venom, the archetype of venom is extremely sharp in one way and extremely wide. So it has this double edge to it. So now I shared about how I used venom really for physical healing, but it's also a slight psychedelic and it's like an opener. So I'll share an experience. I sat one time next to a beehive. It was very calm, the beehive was welcoming me. I felt really welcome. Then a bee starts to fly around me and then lands on my forehead, starts to walk, and gently arrives on my third eye exactly and sticks me there. So this, I call it a sting of initiation. When I have some of my students who receive a sting like this, it's not a sting of go away. It's not a sting of healing, especially, or it is part of healing, but it's specifically an eye opener in that case on the third eye. And then I went into like about a half an hour trip where the venom went to my brain and opened my perception to a different. I'm normally a bit short-sighted. In this moment, I was not anymore at all. I could see the details in the horizon on the other side of the hill. I could see the minute detail of everything. And then I looked down on the ground, and a microcosm became like a whole world that opened to me. All my senses were highly, highly awakened. To say on a note, that it's not something I recommend. It's of course something to be held if it's something of interest for who is listening, because of course it can be very dangerous, especially if allergic reaction.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is not something that I knew about bee sting before, and so that is obviously the kind of more expansive experience, and you know, I'm guessing that's almost like a spiritual awakening. You mentioned it feeling like an opening. How did that translate then to your physical healing? Because it sounds like it had quite a transformative impact on your physical health as well. And how much of that do you think was a connection to your own opening and awareness of your ability to heal and the bee's impact as well? Because I believe we can all heal ourselves, right? Our thoughts are really powerful. And we've had some amazing people on our podcast over the episodes that have used various plant medicines or animal medicines and thought and spiritual belief to make significant improvements in their almost terminal diagnosis. So what is your understanding of the part that the bee played in your physical health and healing?
It's a real awakening of my own healing force that happened. And to be complete, it's not the only thing that supported me in my healing journey. This was one of many things that brought me out. But yeah, I felt supported by a very, very wide and wise field during this journey. And it also, what I believe, opened more and more my conversation with this being that gave birth then to this book. It's one of the tools or the gifts offered by Mother Earth that come through them. And maybe on a more, like, because the bees are so spoken about at the moment as threatened, and their health condition is challenged, and there is really calling of a different type of relationship. Like, they have been used as little honey machines or pollinating machines. There's so much more than that. Their role in nature is actually beyond pollination and the ecological journey, is to revitalize the ethers of the planet. So Gaia has a sort of clothing around her of an energy lines and networks. We know a lot about the ley lines, but there are millions of other types of lines. And the insects especially are responsible, I believe, or I heard or understood, for like a bit our heart would have the function of pumping the blood throughout our blood system. Their sounds, their buzzing, or their all the sounds of the insects that are repetitive and a bit drum-like, like trance-inducing, create this pulsing that keeps the earth alive. And what they showed me is that in certain areas where there have been loss of conflict, or the earth has been damaged by machinery or war, or these networks are broken, they are wounded, and they can support to refix, like little sewers. I don't know if that's the correct word. They would like recreate those nets so that the earth and also the field can heal. If the holes are too big, then it becomes problematic. It is, I believe, possible, but it needs other tools as well. And why the bees are dying sometimes massively, mostly they are dying in very strong industrial beekeeping ways, like really in big apiaries where chemicals are used and sugar is used and massive transportation, no care when opening. So, but what they tell me is that they have actually very, very different relationship to death than we have. Like for them, death is not at all the end. And I love this picture of the lemniscate, so the infinite symbol, which is also the shape in which the bees dance to communicate where is a source of nectar or a potential new home. And the bees are, for me, they're shamans. They bridge the world. So in this lemniscate symbol, they really are able to dance with life and death without discontinuity. And so this for me has been like a huge shower of hope, because when working with the bees at some point I was a bit desperate, because the situation is on a 3D level is not fun. It's quite dramatic, but they really helped me to widen my camera and see the wider picture. And they are able, like this spring here in Portugal, we had an incredible amount of swarming, and after many years of drought where the bees' health was so low, there is an incredible vitality coming up. Where does this come from? They tell me we can bring life force from the other side of the lemniscate, the other side of the veil. Yes.
Say that again. What did the bees just say to you?
For them, life and death is a continuum. So when they pass through death, they can actually recharge their battery and they can pull back life force through the life. And here we don't have enough words. When I say life force, it's life with big L. And when I say life in comparison to death, it's the life with small l. So the physical life. But they're able to weave those two sides of the lemniscate with an ease that is incredibly inspiring.
Which is, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me, because a beekeeper told me a couple of summers ago that they found honey in some of the tombs in Egypt and they think it's still edible. So that it hasn't broken, like it has the infinite within, when you think of this, you're like, how is it not broken down? And I've always wondered about what, and you saying that just makes me go, okay, the bees are coded with the understanding of the infinite to the point that they can encode it into their nectar and their honey.
Absolutely. And ultimately, a beehive is an immortal being because it's constantly replacing all its cells. Even the queen is replaced regularly. So it's actually doesn't have an aging.
So is it the hive that is the living embodiment then, and the bees are like the hive is the master, and the bees are the, you say a worker bee, and they're the thing, that the being that is keeping the hive alive rather than the other way around? Like, what is the true sort of master of that community?
Well,
because the hive lasts forever.
Here I would say both. I would not choose
Okay.
because I think the embodiment and is part of that whole. So I wanted to speak a bit about this picture that will appear on the podcast if people can have a look, but I will describe it. It's actually a lemniscate that is dancing with a hexagon and a bee in the center. So I have spoken now about the lemniscate, but there is a huge importance as well in the hexagon, which corresponds to the embodiment and the holding. So energy without holding will spill over. Like, let's say honey without a jar will spill and spoil and actually decay. This honey, to be preserved in the tomb, it needed to be held, otherwise it would ferment and decay in a sealed container. And in the beehive, the container is the wax, which has this hexagonal shape. So every little hexagonal cell in a honeycomb, in a hive, is a mini jar of honey. They also hold the brood and pollen. But what it teaches me is that life force is actually a dance between these two opposites. The more dynamic, lemniscatic part of life, which is expanding, like, for example, the honey, it's like a huge concentrate of sunlight, water, nectar, and that comes into
life force.
Yes, life force, pure life force. And for it to be fully expressed in our world, on Gaia, it has to be held by the hexagon. And I applied this to my own life. When I have too much lemniscate, when I'm all over the place, I'm scattered, I need the part of me who will hold myself, the hex that will hold myself, be able to concentrate my energy, to keep it, to preserve it, and to make it last in time. So where these two meet, that's ultimate life force and ultimate presence. And I see it in so many. I'm making now links, for example, in especially now at times of spirituality that is a bit sometimes consumerist and psychedelic use, for example, which is like full on. We want to stimulate to make the lemniscate move. It's like it's very lemniscatic to take this map, and there is really a need to develop the hex part of it. How to hold this energy, how to be with it in order to integrate it, to grow, to expand.
Yeah, you moved, Karila, when you said that. Obviously, not everyone can see Karila. I can, but when you mentioned about the holding, I just felt Karila just go, yes.
It's because I feel like I'm really sitting in the edge in my own life of that, and I'm also really perceiving that have consciousness, which is our capitalist way of harvesting all the honey, trying to take as much medicine as possible, trying to have it just doesn't serve. It doesn't serve in our spirituality. It isn't serving in our community. It isn't serving our humanity. It isn't serving human kindness, which is human honey. And the only way that I can see through is to hold rather than have. And I feel like what you've just shared about kind of strengthening the holding is in a way the missing link in what's kind of going on in our collective awakening at the moment. Is like we're still approaching it from a have, as opposed to like, actually we've got to strengthen the holding in order to embody this more that we are all visioning and calling in. And probably the model, I think you'll agree with me, the bees have the model for it. And it feels like there's so much to learn from the bees. So yes, I'm really moved. I also wanted to just swing back round actually to the venom, because I wanted to ask you a question, just because it popped into me when you were talking. Do you think that venom strengthens our life force energy because it challenges it, because it's venom? So do you think it's like, here's the sovereignty of the bee, now raised to meet it? Is that what you think happens? Or do you think that the venom does something else? I just wondered if it was like, here's a like injection of sovereignty. Now you have no choice but to like increase your immunity, your sovereignty. Is it that is why the venom brings more life force energy in, or is it something else?
Yeah, absolutely. There is, I mean, it is sharp. Like I have been stung so many times that I feel it less on the physical, but it has this like really you don't mess up with it. Like it's such a tiny amount of actually physical substance, but it's your whole body is awakened in an instant and called back to its integrity, to its sovereignness.
And would you say that in order to cope with the venom and this like injection of very potent bee life force energy, like you say, we have to call back our life force energy and essentially hold our life force energy inside of us to, like, what's coming through to me is like this, like, it's like suddenly there's more life force energy that comes in because of the venom. And it's like, this is how much you can hold, actually. Like, you're hanging out in that low level of holding, and the venoms come in and almost like electrical shocked more of your life force energy into you. That's the visual that I'm seeing from this conversation. And I just wonder if, it's quite an out there view, but I wonder if in the great genius of evolution, if all of the poisons and the toxins and everything that we are kind of living in is having a similar effect, in that it's forcing us to have to become more activated in our sovereignty and our life force, and that it's, yeah, that's just what's coming to me. Is there this like genius moment that's happening that is forcing humans to level up, essentially, because of how much venom we're in at the moment, and if it's part of our awakening?
It's a beautiful picture.
It's quite the reframe.
We are in venom times, and it's painful. It is. It is, and the more, you know, now when I was describing, when I was thinking myself years ago, I would do it different today. Like, I would use less. And this the same with any substance in psychedelic and in my life. I actually need less and less and less because ultimately it's the information that is needed. But a physical support for it is definitely makes a difference to for me. But I'm not saying that's the same for everyone. Some people can only work with information. I'm looking at you, Carola, because you speak about psychedelics as or substances usually as what they convey energetically or in terms of information, but not especially needing to ingest them. And I totally see that in our humanity evolution. Like the more dumb and numb we are, and the stronger the message or the amount of pain, because it's resonance, right? And the more subtle it becomes, the less painful events are needed. It's hard to say that as well, considering the situation of the world.
So that, I've got to admit, Carola, you lost me a little bit. And the depth of that, I'm going to have to go back and listen to this episode, because I was like, that was deeply profound. So I'm going to take it on a different direction. Are all bees across the world the same? Are Portuguese bees the same as French, the same as British, or do they have their own unique blend of whatever culture they are part of themselves? Do the different flowers and environment impact the different behaviors of the different bees? You said you had your little tribes that were all quite unique.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have subspecies of different honeybees that are adapted to each region. Here it's called Apis mellifera iberica. Iberica is Spain and Portugal. And she's quite a small black honeybee. And it's interesting, when I arrived to Portugal, someone told me, you'll see, you come from France, you'll see here the bees, they're much more aggressive. I actually discovered that's not true. It depends how you relate to them again.
The French ones would definitely be more aggressive than the Portuguese.
I just want to step out of this aggressiveness being a criteria, because aggressiveness, well, first, I don't use aggressiveness with bees. I use defensiveness, because when they become aggressive is to defend, because they feel threatened. And it depends of us, actually. Depending of us, some colonies, like as baby colonies, like swarms, can already have very strong defensive traits that they carry from former incarnations and genetic lines. But it's actually, I have seen colonies that where defensive calm down, totally soften and open to contact. I mean, I was able to bring so many people without having to wear a suit, or just to the level of comfort you need to feel safe, to put the stethoscopes and have a bath of the choir of the beehive nest, and have a peek through the window, and have a whole journey really in very close contact, feeling totally safe. And that, for so many people, it's a big shift in awareness.
Because the bee does get a bad. They need a new PR agency, because what you've described for us today is this, and the joy on your face that lights up when you talk about your bees is just beautiful. But the importance of the lessons of the hive, the holding, the communication is just, there's been so many impactful moments that I feel like the bee needs a new PR agency, because it does get a really bad reputation, and that destroys the summer, or it's got in the way, and it's a nuisance and something to run away from or be fearful from. As soon as someone sees a bee coming near them, they tend to panic and and run away, which probably then adds to that kind of defensive threat that the bee feels. So I definitely think that we need to be spreading this podcast far and wide, so everybody starts to appreciate the beauty and the significance,
and the whole thing of relationship, because there are areas where there are too many intensively kept honeybees. So it is true that sometimes they can overtake, and that can be a threat to other wild species of bees. And so I'm not an advocate of intense apiaries, and it's about balance.
Yeah.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking of what humans wear, like beekeeping outfit, and like, to be fair, that is not like the way to build a harmonious relationship. It's like, we're coming in with our defenses up. It's almost like coming into the field with a load of armor on, or like expectation that the bees are gonna sting. It's kind of meeting them in battle already, as opposed to, like you say, just coming in and being present.
The bee suit is like in energy work, sometimes you put extra layers of protection because you want to feel safer. So I like when I bring new people who are a bit anxious, it can really help as a medium to create the trust that's necessary to slow it. And then I bring the person to have a hand free and have a drop of honey and welcome a bee on their finger, and then something can move.
Well, I was just talking about the bees needing a new PR agency, but the day before we recorded this, apparently David Beckham met the king, and they talked about beekeeping, because they're both massive beekeepers and fans of kind of that more natural way of connecting back into nature and our surroundings. So maybe this is fortuitous timing where we can spread the good word. Karila, did you have any thoughts as we I was trying to bring a pun into the thing. I'll think about it, how we can be coming to an end of the podcast today. I failed miserably, so over to you.
I really want to say that I feel like you're an amazing spokesperson for the Bee Diva and the bees. Since this podcast has started, I've not just felt what you're saying. I've felt the field, and I've felt the frequency, and I've felt the presence of
well, can I just say, you've made
voices.
Us feel very present. You have such an amazing presence yourself that we're drawn in, and like bees to honey. Just very a very calming and inviting way that you speak about what you do so passionately, that it does make me feel very present and connected.
Thank you. And actually, I would like to just ask if you could answer quick, why do you think presence is so important to the bees?
The more present you are, the more life force is available. Like, I feel it in my daily life. The more present, and it is stunning how much life force is available. Presence is the key.
Amen. We have our soundbite right there, and a message to live by.
Message from the bees to live by. I am buzzing. The intention worked. I'm like buzzing with the importance of presence.
I'm enjoying the nectar of life.
The other question I would like to ask you is, who should we speak to next on this show?
I think of a friend called Miguel Hamlet. He lives in Portugal, and he's into regenerative landscapes, entropy, and also very much of beautiful shamanic practitioner. That would be lovely.
Thank you so much. What an absolute joy today has been. And I've learned so much, as I'm sure our listeners will have as well. So from me personally, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful for you and your path and your presence. Thank you so much. We hope this conversation has topped up your life force energy. If it has, then please help us spread the life force. Like, share, subscribe, all of that. And may the life force be with all of us.